Welcome to Taste Buzz. I'm Debra Eckerling, goal strategist, writer, and foodie. Today, I'm speaking with sisters Amy and Nancy Harrington, who are the co-founders of the Passionista Project Sisterhood. Hi,
Thanks for having us.
thank you for being here. We met through Katie Chen. It was one of those situations where she had been meaning to introduce us, and then we met at one of the events because that's what happens. Anyway, who are you and what is the Passionista Project?
Well, we are sisters, first and foremost. Before anything else we do, we are sisters, but we're also business partners. The Passionistas Project is an online sisterhood of women who come together to lift each other up in the areas of business development, personal growth, and social impact. So it's a group of women who, when you meet them, the first thing they ask you is, what can I do for you? How can I help you? So we love that about the sisterhood. But Amy and I started our careers in entertainment, and we have done 1,600 celebrity interviews and more. And we've had a long and winding road from Amy's time as a vice president of post-production visual effects at Warner Brothers, working on movies like Harry Potter, The Matrix. And I did Academy Award campaigns for Miramax for several years. So we've run the gamut, but now the Passionistas Project is our main focus and our passion, no pun intended.
Oh, I think the pun was probably a little bit intended. Anything to add, Amy, or is this what happens when sister answers for both?
No, we're pretty good. We share a mind. Yeah, the only thing I'd add is that at the core of everything we do is giving a platform to women to tell their stories, especially women from marginalized communities, who don't often get to speak for themselves. So there's spaces in the community where they can share. We also have anthology books and help people write their memoirs and just and a podcast called the Passionistas Project podcast. So it's all about elevating women who don't often get the support and attention that they need.
Did you just wake up one day and say, we need to do this thing?
Literally.
Really?
Like Nancy said, we started in entertainment. Then we kind of I left Warner Brothers, Nancy left her Academy campaign job at the same time. We didn't really know what we were gonna do. We just knew we wanted to do something together. And we started on this twisting path that led us to becoming celebrity interviewers and doing red carpet interviews at the Emmys and events and doing archival interviews for clients like the Television Academy. And we loved doing it, and we were finding that through interviewing, we were really tapping into this new form of storytelling that was really powerful. And then in 2016, there were just some shifts in the world, and the Me Too movement was in full force. And literally, we had talked about doing a podcast, but we didn't wanna do a pop culture podcast. We felt like we didn't have an angle on that was interesting, and literally woke up one night and thought, no, we need to help women. We need to do a podcast that is all about women and shining a spotlight on them. And it was gonna be a little side project, and then that snowballed into an annual women's equality summit called The Power of Passionistas, and that led to us forming the community.
Okay, so this is Taste Buds with Deb. So where's the food?
It's all about the food, Deb. I wake up thinking about food, I eat, and then I think about food. Food has always been a huge part of our lives. We were raised, Catholic, although we found out later, much more recently, that we have Jewish, heritage, and we were raised by our Italian relatives, and so everything was about food. It was all about Sunday dinner and making a big pot of spaghetti sauce and testing the pasta, being the one that got to sneak into the kitchen and make sure the pasta was cooked completely, and, everything centered around the kitchen, and our Italian great-grandmother who you'd go to her house and you'd go into the kitchen and she'd be cooking, and sitting around the family dinner table either every night or on Sundays and eating and just sharing our lives. Again, storytelling over food. It all was connected, always has been.
So you were Jewish before you knew you were Jewish. That's a very Jewish thing is you talk about what you're eating, what you just ate, and what you're going to eat. But how did you discover this Jewish ancestry?
It's a crazy woo story. Some people may not believe us, but it is true. Um, I was having electrical issues in my house and I had my tarot cards read, and our dear friend told us that our ancient aunties were trying to tell us to have more fun. And I said, ancient aunties, do you mean? Because we have very many Italian relatives that lived well into their hundreds. So we thought she meant our Italian heritage. And she said, no, I mean your ancient aunties, like ancient, like way back. And we're like, what are you talking about? And then she started telling us about the history of the Jewish people in Eastern Europe and how they migrated to different areas of Europe. And she went on and on for like 5 or 10 minutes about this fascinating story. And I was like, well, that is a fabulous story, really interesting, but why are you telling me this? And she's like, well, because you're Jewish. But like, no, we're not Jewish. We're Irish Italian Catholics. And she said, no, you're Jewish. And she said she's clairvoyant. People may or may not believe in that, but she says when she speaks to us, she is surrounded by little Jewish, like hunched over little Jewish women. And those were our spirit guides. And we're like, and she said, they're telling you to have more fun. And I was like, all right, we'll have more fun. So I'm relating this story to our older sister a few days later. And she tells me, oh, yeah, I talked to Johnny Sacco once. Now, Johnny Sacco is our oldest living relative. He's my mother's cousin on the Italian side of the family. And he has done our complete genealogy. And it turns out that our relatives, the Saccos, who lived in southern Italy, actually migrated to southern Italy in the like 900, 1000 era and lived in Italy. But when they got there, their name was Isacco, which is Isaac, right? And they converted to Catholicism and changed their name to Sacco when Jews at the time were either given the option to either convert or be slaughtered. So
Not really a choice.
yeah, not really a choice. And
Smart.
our Sacco relatives that we have celebrated and eaten many an Italian dinner over for decades were actually originally the Isaccos, the Isaacs.
So how did it feel? Because I remember when I met you, I'm like, you guys are Jewish, right? And you were like, funnily enough, we just found out that we are. What was your reaction to this?
It made total sense. There are 5 of us siblings, and we all kind of left Catholicism early in our life, like very early in our lives. We went to Catholic school, but never, the Catholic Church is a complicated system, and we never really connected to it once we were old enough to make our own choice. But going to college, Nancy had a boyfriend who was Jewish. I had a roommate who was Jewish, and we started to like do seders and light Hanukkah candles with the people in our lives who were Jewish. And my fiance is Jewish, and so he and I will do Shabbat dinners, and we go to the Kolomi Temple in Los Angeles and are very close with Rabbi Resnick, and he was close with Rabbi Finley from our tour. So as adults, there's always been this connection. And I do think part of that has also always been the food. Like I learned how to make matzah brie, and I learned how to make latkes. And as his mom got older, I was able to kind of like bring latkes out there for the holidays. And there is that thing that when we go to his mom's house, it's like we literally will come back from lunch and we'll sit down in her living room and she'll say, "Can I get you something? Do you want a piece of cake?" And we're like, "We just had a full lunch, including dessert." But it's very Italian, very similar food culture. It all just kind of felt really natural. So when she said it, it was like, yeah, I'm not the least bit surprised.
Makes
And
total
it
sense. Yeah.
feels very natural, and it almost feels like a piece of something that we knew was there, that has been validated. Like, why do we connect with this thing so clearly and so closely? It's because it has always been in us in some way, so.
And yeah, I think I've been involved in more Jewish traditions than than Catholic traditions in my lifetime because of all of our Jewish friends and family. Our brother married a Jewish woman and raised his kids Jewish and converted to Judaism. And so it's very much a part of our life, always has been. So it felt really natural.
Do you feel like you become more Jewish since you discovered you were actually Jewish, or it's life is that's just how you were before, no changes?
I feel exactly the same, but it's an awareness that, oh, that's part of my heritage. Like I think, and I think it's the Italian side. They're very similar cultures, you know. And I think that's partly because so many Jews immigrated to Italy back in the day, right? So I think they're very, very similar cultures. So I don't really feel different. I just there's just a nice warm awareness for me.
What specifically do you think are some of the the standout similarities, including but not limited to the love of food and talking about food?
I do. I think that is a big part of it. I think it's about food and family.
Yeah.
And that's what we were raised on was food and family. Like, those were number one and two.
I definitely think the family part is the other 100% clear connection. And the love of the ritual of it, like, even I think people who don't practice Judaism daily or weekly, or in the same with Catholics I know who aren't necessarily people who go to church every week, like the big holidays, the big important cultural experiences, people really are gravitated toward them and they mean something to them. They can live 364 days a year not thinking about it, but they stop everything and they go to midnight mass if they're Catholic, or they observe, Yom Kippur, whatever it is, like they prioritize those things that are part of their culture. And I think that's a huge similarity. And I think that is partly, if not mostly, because of the connection to family.
And which of the foods are similar?
Interesting. I think every culture has its potato kind of thing. Like, we have this great cookbook. I meant to have it in front of me that a woman, actually has a restaurant in Los Angeles that is a challah sandwich shop. It's all fresh made challah bread. But she wrote a cookbook that's about Judaism, the Jewish food in Italy. It's an amazing cookbook.
I know who you're talking about. She's in Santa Monica, right?
Exactly. The great book, and I'm sorry that I don't have it in front of me. But that was in there the other day, and there's something similar to, like, latkes, but they're more kinda like mashed potatoes, that are compressed almost more like a hash brown. So there's that. I think, I always associate kind of New York, Jews with New York cheesecake, and in Italy, we have pizza dolce, which is just a sweeter, less tart version. It's actually the recipe we sent you. Um, there's noodle kugel, and then there's, like, the Italian pastas, and so there's just so much overlap, and then you get into desserts and the cakes and the cookies, and, so, yeah, I mean, there's stuff that's not at all similar, like gefilte fish and, that kind of stuff, but
The seven fishes in Catholicism.
that's
So
true. There's the Feast of the Seven Fishes.
there is a fish component. We just didn't eat a lot of fish as kids, but
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah.
Wow. I just love that you went there. Well, let's talk about your recipes. If you go to jewishjournal.com/podcast, and you will be able to read the article, read the recipe that goes with each episode. What is the recipe and why did you choose that?
So the recipe is called, pizza dolce, and it's the cheesecake I was talking about a few minutes ago. So it's made with ricotta cheese instead of cream cheese. So it's a little bit sweeter and it's a little bit less tart. Um, we picked it because of all of the foods that our mother made. It really it means a lot to us. It's a recipe we make every year. We could have shared her pasta, her, Italian gravy or some Italian thing, but this is actually a really important Italian dish. We actually, growing up, called it Easter pizza because 'cause we're from Boston, and because it's pizza Dolce. So this cheesecake became our Easter pizza. But in researching it a little bit more, what's interesting about it is it's a cheesecake that migrated from Southern Italy, which is where our Italian relatives were from, just kind of north of Naples, to Rome. And it was at a time where people were fleeing Southern Naples, Southern Italy, because, the Jews were fleeing because they were being made to either convert or die. And so this was one of the big dishes that actually migrated with the Jewish people from Southern Italy to Rome. And that's not something we knew until we started talking to you the other day. And we were like, is it feels like this is the recipe to include. Is there any connection that we don't even consciously know about? Because clearly all this stuff is like with the actual Judaism itself, it's all baked into our psyches and we just didn't realize it. So once we researched it, we were like, oh, of course there's a historical significance to the Italian Jewish experience with this food. It was like a slam dunk, like, well, this has to be there. And it's delicious. It's a and it's, you all have to try it, and you can eat it any time of year, really, but we limit ourselves to Easter, Passover time because it's also very fattening, and if we made it all the time, we would weigh 5,000 pounds.
The woman that you were talking about is Benedita Gietta. Did I pronounce that right?
Yeah.
Benedita Gietta. I interviewed her for the journal before I started the podcast, so thank you for the reminder. I need to reach out and get her on. And I do remember she was very full of personality and love of all of the things, which is, common theme of whether you're Jewish or not. When you're doing the thing that you love, when you have the passion for it, it leaks out all over the place.
Yeah, absolutely. And she is so passionate and she worked so hard to bring that book to life. And it's really beautiful. It's got recipes, but it's also got this amazing history of Italian Judaism. Can't recommend it enough.
Before we wrap, are there things that Jews and Italians can learn for each other, food or otherwise?
I think sitting down at a table together, breaking bread, sharing a meal, maybe a glass of wine, and telling stories. I think it's the most important thing that we can do. And I think that's really embedded in both cultures. And I think that's the best way to learn anything from each other is to tell stories and listen.
Yeah, and I think, I think both Jews and Italians, are really open. The people that we have known, and I know that's a broad sweeping generalization of cultures, but the people that we have known want to connect. They want to bring you in. Going to a new temple, and having people really want you to feel welcome and want you to feel like you belong there, and going to someone's Seder in their house, and they really want you to feel like you're a part of that experience and teach you the things that you might not know and walk you through it, has always been our experience in our own Catholic, background family, and our Italian family is everybody's always welcome. There's always that seat at the table, whether it's for Elijah or somebody else. And so, like, welcome people in, get to know the people from other cultures. There's always room to let a stranger feel welcome and to accept and love somebody new.
Amazing. Love this. Thank you both so much. Where can people learn more about the both of you and the Passionista Project?
You can go to thepassionistasproject.com and everything's there. You can reach out to us through email, all our socials, everything about the sisterhood and all of the storytelling programs we have. So we hope to see you there.
Wonderful. Thank you both, Amy and Nancy, so much for joining me today and for sharing your love of all things food and both of your cultures. I love how you've integrated everything and the fact that you help people raise their voices through the Passionistas Project. I mean, even better, right? So thank you both. Thank you for tuning in to Taste Buds with Deb. Don't miss an episode. Subscribe on YouTube, iTunes, and or your favorite podcast platform. And If you go to jewishjournal.com, you can get the recipes and read the articles that go with each episode, and you can learn more at tastebudswithdeb.com. Until next time, sit down and have a chat, have a nosh, and bon appetit.